Hey, good morning, guys. We are going to take a look at testable questions. So looking at a question and deciding, is it a testable question? Is it something that we could design an experiment around? Or is it just an opinion, something that we could not design an experiment around? Did you know that scientists can be thought of as detectives? Think about it. A detective's job is to investigate or explore a problem. Scientists do this all the time. They make an observation and try to figure out why something is the way it is. Before scientists can do any further research, they have to come up with a testable question. A testable question is when a person creates an experiment to best find the answer to the question. Another way to think about a testable question is something that can be tested and not something based on an opinion. Look at the examples to see the difference. So we'll stop there for a moment and we're just going to highlight that a testable question is something that can be tested and not something based on an opinion. Yesterday we did a little bit of work looking at fact and opinion. All right, so this section here will look at chocolate and airplane design, and you'll see how one can be testable and one is not testable. So what type of chocolate melts the quickest? That is a testable question. We could set that up as an experiment. Not testable. Which type of chocolate tastes the best? How can you measure what tastes the best? This is based on opinion. Now, you could do a survey and gather what people like, what type of chocolate, dark chocolate, milk chocolate, white chocolate, what people like, but it's not an experiment because an experiment needs to have a result that can be reproducible, can be something that another scientist can do the exact same experiment and come up with perhaps the exact same results. But something like an opinion, you're not going to be able to do that. All right, another testable question. Which paper airplane design will fly the farthest? You could do that. You could have two different designs and figure out which one flies the farthest. Not testable. Which paper airplane design is the prettiest? Once again, based on opinion. So how could you measure which airplane design is the prettiest? How could you measure that? Because when you do an experiment, we need to be able to measure the results. Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So you're going to place a check in the correct box if the following questions are testable or not. If no, explain why you think it's not testable. So you can pause this video if you like to do this section on your own and then start it up again to check your answers, okay? All right, which melts ice the fastest? Salt, a flame, or room temperature? Could you set that up as an experiment? Is that a testable question? Yes. I suppose we should put a check mark like it said. There we go. Which candy has the best flavor? Skittles, Nerds, or Sour Patch Kids? We can't set up an experiment for that. You know, that is an opinion. So how can we tell which one of those has the best flavor? We are not able to do that. That's not something we can measure. So do roses or carnations bloom faster? Could we actually test that? Yes, we could. Between a Nintendo DS and PlayStation PSP, which plays better? Well, once again, whoops, this is an opinion. One person really might like a Nintendo DS, and they might think that that plays better. And another person might disagree with that and think that the PlayStation is a better gaming system. So once again, can't set that up for an experiment. It is not testable. Okay, so what we're going to do in this little section is we're going to read this statement and we're going to try to come up with a testable question, okay? Read the following situations and create a question that can be tested. Remember, your questions cannot be your opinion. One day, Jackson was drinking a can of Sprite. Later that day, Jackson had a can of Dr. Pepper. Then he wondered which brand of soda goes flat the quickest. What is a possible testable question Jackson could create? So, a possible question could be between Sprite and Dr. Pepper, which soda will go flat the quickest? We could set that up as an experiment. And why I chose those words is that's really the words right from the scenario. We see Sprite, we see Dr. Pepper, and we have the question, flat the quickest. So we're going to embed that in our testable question. Isabella received an iPod docking station for her birthday. She wanted to take it to the beach for the day, but wasn't sure which battery brand would last the longest. She decides to buy 3 different brands: Energizer, Duracell, and Panasonic. What testable question can Isabella come up with? So she is wondering, so let's go and take a look at what she is wondering about. She wonders what battery brand is going to last longest. So we'll want to test that. So which battery lasts the longest in an iPod docking station? So we would then list them. We would list Energizer, Duracell, or Panasonic. We could set this up as an experiment. We'll talk about that in a second. Janelle took out some salted butter from the refrigerator one afternoon and forgot to put it back until later that night. She realized it had become very soft from leaving it out so long. She wondered if other types of butter, like unsalted butter and margarine, become soft at the same rate of time. How can Janelle test her observation? All right, so this one, it skips over the doing a testable question. So let's go ahead and do that testable question first. So we could say, which melts the fastest? Salted or unsalted butter, or margarine? All right, so that's the testable question. So what would she do? She would take the exact same size stick of margarine and one exact same size stick of salted butter and then the third of unsalted butter. She would put it on the counter, exposing it to the same room temperature and the same amount of sunlight, and she would leave it on there the same amount of time. So let's say I'm going to go back and check it in 2 hours. She would check all 3 sticks of butter or margarine at that exact same time. Or maybe she said, I'm going to check again in 6 hours, would come back and check all 3 of those sticks of butter or margarine at the exact same time. So that's how she would set up this type of experiment. All right. Scott likes to plant vegetables every spring. He wonders, out of jalapeno peppers, cucumbers, and zucchini, which plant sprouts the quickest? What is a testable question Scott can create to experiment with? All righty, so you could do something as simple as, which type of vegetable sprouts the fastest, the quickest? Jalapeno peppers, cucumbers, or zucchini. Just kind of abbreviating there, all right? So let's take a look at the question to see, all right? So he wonders, we've got jalapeno peppers, cucumbers, and zucchini, and what he wants to know is which ones sprouts the quickest. So we're going to take that thought process and turn that into a testable question. We could create an experiment with this. So I have added this little additional paper for us to take a look at and introducing the idea of variables to you. All right, variables are going to be some of the elements within that experiment. Specifically, the independent variable and the dependent variable is what we're going to look at today. So I have created a little chart that goes with the different experiments that we talked about. All right, so let's remind ourselves about the chocolate melting. That's this first one up here. What type of chocolate melts the quickest? All right, so our independent variable is what we are going to purposely change. And so that would be the type of chocolate. So whether that be dark chocolate and white chocolate, whether that be milk chocolate and dark chocolate, but the type of chocolate, we need to have 2 types of chocolate, at least 2 types of chocolate, and determine which one melts the quickest. All right, which one melts the quickest? So what are we going to measure? What is measured is going to be time. Whoops. Because we want to know how quickly. So that is going to be time. That's going to be our dependent variable. That's what we are going to measure. What we're purposely going to change is the type of chocolate. All right, let's take a look at this next one. With what paper airplane design will fly the farthest? All right, so what are we purposely changing is the airplane design. So we would have 2 different airplanes, for example, one folded one way and then another airplane folded in a completely different design. So what are we measuring? We're trying to see about the farthest. So we are measuring distance. So whether that be feet or yards or meters, whatever it's set up, okay? Now, let's take a look at the melting ice. So with this one, what melts ice the fastest? Salt, flame, or room temperature? So what are we going to purposely change is what is exposed to the ice. So whether that be the salt or the flame or the room temperature. So what the ice is exposed to, okay? So what we're measuring then is fastest, okay? What melts the fastest, okay? Melts fastest, this. And so that is going to be time. Okay, so what is exposed to the ice? So we're measuring time. Now, let's take a look at this one with the flowers. Do roses or carnations bloom faster? So what we would purposely change is the type of flower. That is the independent variable, the type of flower. And we are looking again here at fastest. So what we are going to be measuring, our dependent variable, is time. In hours or days, whatever we are setting the experiment up. So soda going flat. That one was the Sprite and Dr. Pepper. Okay, so by the question here, we're looking at quickest. All right, so what we have is the type of soda. So whether that be Sprite or Dr. Pepper, and we are looking at fastest. So that is going to be the dependent variable in this experiment would be time. What are we measuring? The dependent variable is what we measure. The independent variable is what we're purposely changing. So in this one here, we're purposely changing the type of soda. We're purposely changing the type of flour. We're purposely changing what the ice is exposed to. We're purposely changing the design of the airplane. We're purposely changing the type of chocolate. What we're measuring, time, distance. Those are very, very common dependent variables. All right, let's look at the batteries. All right, so this is one where she bought these different batteries for her iPod docking station, if that's even a thing anymore. So lasts the longest. All right, so on this one here, what we are purposely changing is the type of battery. What we are measuring is longest, and so that is time. Butter melting. All right, so we are looking here at the type of butter, and we're looking at is it going to melt at the same rate of time? So what are we purposely changing is the type of butter. So same rate is what her question is. Do they melt at the same rate? So what we are measuring then is time. And the final one here would be with these vegetables sprouting. So and sprouting the quickest. So what we are purposely changing is the type of plant. And we are wondering the sprouting the quickest. So what we are measuring then is time. Okay, so that is a little introduction to the idea of isolating variables, isolating an independent variable, the one thing in that experiment that we are purposely changing, and then our dependent variable is what we are measuring as a result of that independent variable. So the type of chocolate, the dark chocolate, how long did it take to melt? The white chocolate, how long did it take to melt? The airplane design A, airplane design B, what was the distance for A? What was the distance to B? The exposed to ice, that was the flame and the salt and the room temperature. What was the time that each one of those took to melt that ice? With the type of flower, we had roses, how long did that take? We had carnation, how long did that take? So we're measuring based on we're going to get different results based on our independent variable. All right, so more to come on these idea of independent and dependent variables next time. But biggest takeaway today is recognizing that a testable question has to be something that we could design an experiment around. We have to be able to have variables. We have to have it be measurable, whether that be with time, or whether that be with meters, like how far or how tall a plant grows. So it's going to be our dependent variable. It's going to fall more so under the quantitative, like dealing with a number. All right. So if it is an opinion, we cannot make an experiment around that, right? We can't test opinions. All right, so nothing to submit today. Just make sure that you are getting the hang of this idea of looking at a question and deciding, could we test it, yes or no, or looking at a little scenario or situation and being able to write a question for that we could test. And then with that same question, what could we pull out as our independent variable? What are we purposely changing? And then what are we measuring, which is what our dependent variable would be. Okay? All right, reach out if you need anything. Take care now.